The beeping was the only sound that broke the silence. Inside, a pale blue medical ward floating. High above the ruined planet of Drenner 4, machines blinked and sighed with clinical indifference. The room smelled of sterilization, gas, and recycled air. It was clean. To clean. In the center of the room, on a padded med table, a small figure struggled to breathe. His skin was pale violet, his lungs rising in uneven rhythm. A set of glassy, color-shifting eyes blinked slowly under a swollen brow. His name was Amari, and he was neither fully human nor fully alien, and he was dying. Around him stood 3 tall, insectoid doctors Zellery, members of the High Medical Order of the Vorex. Their long, thin limbs moved with slow precision as they removed gloves and disconnected devices. One of them, older than the others, gave a short nod. There is no more to be done. The hybrid body rejects treatment. Another nodded grimly. We logged 18 failures. Neural destabilization, organ collapse. It cannot survive. Amari let out a soft wheeze. His chest shuddered. None of them looked at him. They turned, without another word, and walked out, leaving the half-alien, half-human child in the room alone, cold and dying. Across the galaxy, silence spreading the observation deck above the medbay. A young assistant named Frel stood frozen. His fingers trembled above the console. He was only a second-year intern. It's not important enough to speak. But as he stared down at the small, failing body, something twisted in his chest. "You're just a hybrid," he whispered to himself. "But you still have eyes. You still breathe." Frel hit a few keys on the console. A single image of the child barely alive was captured by the medical camera. A shaky file with the words, "Patient AMO47, declared untreatable. Med team discharged." The file was supposed to be archived, but Frel didn't archive it. He copied it. And then, with a flick of his finger, he transmitted it across the CUM network off the station. Someone has to care. He didn't know where the file would end up. He just hoped it went somewhere human. Myra Halden was tired. Her hands were deep in rusted machinery, pulling coolant lines out of a failing water pump. She'd been working since before sunrise in the dust storms of Colony 6, the oldest human settlement on Mars. Myra was no longer a soldier, no longer a medic. But her instincts were still sharp. Her eyes still caught the smallest signs of damage, and her heart still burned with the same stubborn fire. She lived alone except for the 5 hybrid orphans she fostered. Not all of them were hers by blood, but all of them called her Mama. That was enough. She was just finishing the repair when her worn-out datapad buzzed with a strange alert. Medical feed received. Origin: Varric Station, Drenner 4 orbit. Unsecured transmission. Mira tapped the screen, frowning. The feed opened, and there, on a flickering screen, was a child half-human, purple-skinned. Barely breathing, her heart stopped. His face looked like one of her own foster children, Carrie's, who had nearly died in her arms 3 years ago before. Mira had hacked together her own blend of medicine and stubbornness to save her. Now, Karis ran laps around her dome and painted. Murals on the walls. But this boy, this Amari, was alone, dying. And the text beneath the video said it all. Treatment. Declined. Hybrid unsavable. Mid-rights terminated. Mira clenched the edge of the table. Her knuckles went white. Mira stood up without a word. She wiped the dust from her face and stormed into her dome home. "Karis, watch the little ones," she said. Got a ship to wake up. Her personal shuttle once a medical evac craft hadn't flown in years, but it still worked. Myra had kept it tuned for emergencies. This was one. She loaded the coordinates for Drenner 4. The route was restricted. Civilian landing near a Varric medical station was forbidden. Mira didn't care. She sent an override request to the Mars Port Authority. When the denial came, she sent a second message, this one to the media with the footage attached. She knew how the court of public opinion worked. If she couldn't get to that station legally, she'd make enough noise to become too visible to shoot down. She had 12 hours before the child flatlined. That's what the med report said. 12 hours to cross 3-star lanes and do the impossible. Again, Amari's breathing slowed. His tiny hand twitched inside his fading brain. Strange thoughts flickered, memories that weren't quite memories. A woman's voice, song, a warm touch. But they were distant. Like echoes in water, no one came to hold his hand. No one stood beside him. The station lights dimmed slightly for the evening cycle. But no one turned off the machines. He was already marked for death. Mira locked her course into the shuttle's AI and hit the ignition. The thrusters screamed to life. "Not today," she whispered to the stars. "You don't get to take him today." The stars streaked past Mira Halden's cockpit in glowing blue lines. Her ship, the Jubilee, shuddered slightly as it hit FTL speed. The engines were old, the wiring temperamental, but Mira had rebuilt every inch of this vessel with her own hands. It was stubborn. Just like her, the child had 9 hours left. They told her it was pointless. Her comlink buzzed for the 3rd time. Myra didn't answer it at first. She knew who it was. When she finally tapped the line open, a gray-hued alien face filled the screen. Administrator Velk, from the Drenner for Varick's medical station. Civilian vessel Jubilee. You are on an unauthorized approach vector to a restricted medical facility. Turn back immediately. Mira didn't blink. She kept flying. "I'm coming for the boy," she said flatly. "You left him to die. I won't." Velk's mouth tightened. "The patient is genetically incompatible with sustained life. Rex. Medicine has failed. There is no protocol left." "Maybe your medicine failed," Mira snapped. "But mine hasn't, and you forgot one thing." "What?" "I don't leave kids to die alone." She cut the transmission. Every system said she should turn back as she neared the Drenner system. Myra's ship started showing strain, reactor power dipping, cooling arrays overheating, navigation lights flickering. She could barely spare time to glance at the readouts. Her mind was locked on the child Amari, the memory of his tiny, gasping chest on the screen. She wasn't just a foster mom. She was a former battlefield medic. She'd saved dying soldiers on moons soaked with acid rain and craters full of fire. This was just one child, one life, and she refused to let it end like this. Back on the station, they prepared the body inside the Dren for Med Center. The doctors had already activated mortality protocols for Amari. The machines still kept him alive, barely, but only as part of procedural dignity. They'd even scheduled the body transfer. In 4 hours, he would be sealed into a cryo case and sent to a distant reclamation center. No next of kin. No funeral, just incineration. Frel, the young intern who had sent the message, watched from behind the glass. His stomach twisted. "He's still breathing," Frel whispered. "He's not gone." But no one listened until the alarm sounded. Unauthorized. Ship approaching the station's command center lit up in red. The Jubilee was entering their no-fly zone, directly headed for the lower hangar. Emergency response officers suited up. The internal defense turrets began charging. The station hadn't seen unauthorized human entry in years. Velk's voice crackled over the intercom. "This is a violation of treaty law. Detain the pilot and impound her vessel. Use force if necessary." But someone in the command room hesitated. The image from the earlier leak, the child's pale face, had now gone viral. Thousands of humans across dozens of colonies were watching this exact moment. Live. Kicking out a human woman trying to save a dying child wouldn't look good, and Mira knew it. She landed hard, then kicked the door open. The Jubilee's landing was almost dangerous, but she didn't care. Mira stormed down the exit ramp with a medical satchel slung over one shoulder and a defibrillator unit in her hand. "Out of my way," she said to the 2 Virex guards waiting in the hangar. They raised their stun rods. "You have no right to interfere, and you have no soul if you let that child die while you recite laws," she cut in. They hesitated. Mira didn't. Running through a maze of cold metal and indifference, Mira had memorized the med center layout on the trip, and she sprinted past confused nurses and stunned technicians. Some shouted at her. One tried to block her path. She shoved him aside at last. She reached the isolation chamber room 5 Lambda there. Behind a transparent barrier lay the child, so still, so small. She entered without permission. Mira slammed her hand onto the manual override panel. Warning: biohazard loci KDOW. The door hissed open anyway. She stepped into the chamber, dropped to her knees, and placed her hand gently on Amari's cheek. "I'm here," she whispered. "You're not going anywhere." She opened her satchel and began scanning his vitals. Blood pressure, critical. Oxygen, 43%. Liver enzymes, unstable. But there was life. She used human methods the aliens had ignored. Mira attached a handheld regulator to Amari's mouth. It was a human-built hybrid respirator designed during the Martian plague. No alien hospital used them. She injected a mitochondrial activator serum band in alien medicine due to ethical debates. Then she rubbed his chest. Hard. "Come on, little one. Breathe. Don't let them win." And finally, his chest moved once. Then again. Then, steadily, the machines began to beep. Higher, stronger, across the station. The feed lit up. Frel had tapped into the chamber's cam. He uploaded the live feed again, this time showing Amari breathing. On his own, comments exploded across the galaxy. "She's saving him. Alien doctors gave up. Human mom fights on." This is what HFY means. The alien administration panicked. Velk shouted, "She must be removed before this becomes a precedent." But it was already too late. Mira wasn't leaving. Not without him. The station guards entered the chamber, weapons in hand. Mira stood between them and Amari, arms wide. "He's stable," she said. "Touch me, and the entire galaxy sees it." The guards paused. They looked at each other. Then one of them quietly shut off his weapon. "He's really breathing," he muttered. They gave up on the child. She gave him a future. Mira sat beside the bed, brushing hair from Amari's forehead. "You're safe now," she whispered. "Mama's got you." And outside the glass wall, a growing crowd of alien staff stood silent, watching. The footage had already spread across 6 systems by the time Mira sat back in her chair. Inside the glass isolation room, she cradled Amari's small hand. His breathing was shallow but steady. Machines that once predicted certain death now struggled to adjust to the unexpected rise in vital signs. For the first time in 18 hours, the child wasn't dying, and the whole galaxy was watching. On the station, confusion turned to Cal's Virex. Station had never seen anything like it. Alarms still flashed across security consoles. The words "unauthorized human presence," "active," glowed red above every entrance to the Med-Dash Center. But the footage of Myra Halden, human, unlicensed and deeply stubborn, rescuing the child had gone galactic viral. 100 media channels had picked it up. Human rights groups, hybrid advocacy networks, even some alien news services were replaying the footage on a loop. Human woman storms alien hospital to save abandoned hybrid child. Virex doctors face questions. Why was the child left to die? Hero or criminal? The woman who said "not today" to death. Meanwhile, Mira refused to leave his side. Nurse tried to enter the room and escort her out. Mira didn't budge. "You'll have to drag me," she said, eyes fixed on Amari's vital monitor. "He needs round-the-clock care." The nurse hesitated. Something in Mira's voice cold. Steel wrapped in quiet kindness shut her up instead. She left the room and closed the door softly behind her. Then the council got involved hours later. Deep hum echoed through the station's walls. A long, dark ship arrived and docked silently at the upper level. From it stepped 3 members of the Virex High Medical Council, wearing ceremonial bone-white robes and expressionless masks. One of them, Archivist Drawl, had personally signed the order that ended Amari's care. He watched the feed from the medical bay in silence. When he spoke, his voice was like cold water. "The human has violated at least 6 interspecies medical protocols and 3 border treaties. And the child," asked another counselor. "Is still alive?" Drawl admitted. because of her, and that's problematic. A secret meeting was held inside the council chamber behind closed doors. Arguments broke out. Some Virax leaders were furious. Mira's intrusion had made them look incompetent. She's a criminal. Others were worried. What if she's right? What if hybrid biology can be treated using human methods? That was more dangerous than the first idea, because if Mira was right, then hundreds, maybe thousands of other hybrids had died needlessly, and that truth could shatter public trust. So they made a decision. Delay action. Observe the child. Discredit the human quietly, but outside their chambers. People were already taking sides. Human colonies erupted in support in Mars. Mira's adopted daughter Karis watched the story unfold. Her tiny fists were clenched as she stared at the screen. "That's Mama," she whispered. Human leaders from the outer colonies began broadcasting statements. The Virax abandoned a child. Mira Halden saved him. Petitions spread like wildfire. Demand full protection for Mira Halden. Hybrid. Lives Matter. Stop the silent genocide. Make hybrid healthcare a galactic right. Mira's face became a symbol of defiance. A hero to many, a threat to others. Mira was summoned to the central lobby. She knew it would come. The knock at the isolation room's door wasn't loud but firm. 2 tall guards stood there, along with a representative in golden robes. "You are to present yourself to the station council immediately," the representative said. "Do you comply?" Mira stood slowly. Her hand lingered on Amari's shoulder. "Will someone stay with him?" The guards hesitated. One nodded. "I'll watch him," he said softly. Mira walked out, at height. The council tried to intimidate her inside the long council hall. 12 alien elders sat in silence as Mira stood before them. Cameras hovered in the air, broadcasting the moment. "Live." Archivist Drawl leaned forward. "Mira Halden, you have violated alien airspace, broken into a restricted medical facility, and performed unauthorized procedures on a declared terminal patient. Do you deny this?" "No," Myra said simply. Gasps echoed in the room. "Then you confess to your crimes?" "If saving a dying child is a crime," she said, "then yes, I'm guilty." The silence that followed was cold and heavy. Then Mira spoke directly to the galaxy. "You left that boy to die," she said, "because he didn't fit in your perfect little boxes. Half human, half aliens, so you declared him unworthy. But he still breathed. He still had a heartbeat. You walked away, and I didn't." She looked straight into the hovering camera. "I've raised 5 hybrid children. Every single one of them was labeled broken. Every one of them now runs, laughs, learns, and dreams. Amari will too, if you let him live." The feed cut to millions of viewers across space. In homes, bunkers, domes, and starliners, people wept. Others cheered. Few cursed in silence. The council delayed their judgment. They whispered among themselves. Officially, Mira was still in violation of alien law, but charging her now could spark protests or worse, galactic sanctions. So they gave a quiet order. The human is to be watched but not removed. She may continue to care for the child. Temporarily, unofficially. They were hoping she'd leave on her own. Mira had no intention of doing so. Back in the ward, Amari opened his eyes. The nurse who'd been watching him gasped. "He's waking." Amari's eyes fluttered open, glass blue and glowing with faint life. He blinked, turned. His head, a rasp, escaped his throat. Ma. The nurse stood frozen. She tapped her gums. "Call Mira, now." The order came down in silence. Inside the dark-paneled chambers of the Virax Council, Archivist Drawl didn't raise his voice. He simply tapped a button, and a single red symbol appeared on the screen behind him. Arrest. Halden. MIRA immediate. Detention. They couldn't let her keep embarrassing them. The footage had spread beyond human colonies now. Even some alien territories once loyal to Virax science had begun questioning their policies. A woman had broken protocol, defied regulations, trespassed into sacred medical space, and had done the one thing their entire system had failed to do. She had saved the child in the med ward. A soft sound changed everything. nurse who had stayed behind to watch over. Amari wasn't prepared for what happened next. She had only looked away for a moment to adjust a monitoring device. When she turned back, the boy's fingers twitched. Then, his eyelids fluttered. "Doctor, he's moving." The room filled with footsteps. Technicians and alien nurses gathered around the isolation chamber as Amari's chest rose and fell. Strong and steady, he opened his mouth. A whisper came out. "Mama." The room went silent. Then chaos. Mira was in a holding room when the message came. She sat on a metal bench under flickering lights, guarded by 2 armed Varex officers. She wasn't afraid. Her hands were calm in her lap, her face unreadable, but inside she was boiling. "They're not arresting me for breaking the law," she'd told one of them earlier. "They're arresting me because I made them look weak." The younger guard barely passed his rookie years. Couldn't meet her eyes after that. Then his cum unit beeped. He blinked. Looked up. Blinked again. The child. "He's awake," he whispered. "Alive." Mira didn't even flinch. "Of course he is," she said. The council tried to ignore a Tarkovist drawl, dismiss the report as a temporary surge. "Spasms. It is not recovery," he insisted. But the data didn't lie. Brain activity. Normalizing. Oxygen levels. Climbing. Tissue regeneration. Activated alien doctors stared at the numbers, speechless. One whispered this. "This is unprecedented." Drawl's voice turned sharp. "This doesn't change her status. Arrest her. Quietly. Before the public turns her into a martyr." But it was already too late. Outside the station, a human convoy was arriving Merez. Message had reached every colony within 6 jumps. Now ships, human ships were arriving and docking in peaceful protest. Civilian vessels, medical ships, even an old Earth-aligned patrol. Cruiser hovered nearby. They weren't armed. They didn't need to be. The message was clear. Touch her, and you touch all of us. Inside the station, the command staff hesitated. One officer, watching the ships gather, turned to her commander and said, "Sir, if we take her now, we start a war of ideas. One, we can't win." Meanwhile, Mira was let out without a word. The door to her holding room hissed open. A silent guard stepped in. He looked different, nervous, maybe even ashamed. "You're free to return to the med ward," he said. Mira raised an eyebrow. "No charges? No comment." She stood slowly and walked past him. "Smart choice," she muttered. She returned to find the impossible waiting. Mara's eyes were open. His head turned when she walked in. He looked weak but aware. When he saw her, his lips moved. "Ma. Ma." Myra blinked, her throat tightening. "Yeah, baby," she said softly. "Mama's here." He reached for her hand. She held it gently. Feeling the small warmth of his palm, the doctors, dozens of them, watched from behind the glass, silent. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked broken. It's like a truth they'd buried had just cracked wide open. They'd given up. But a human hadn't tone of the senior doctors. A Varex researcher named Dr. Elvin stepped forward. He activated the mic into the room. "Miss Heldon, I must admit, I did not think this was possible." "That makes 2 of us," Mira said. "May we study your methods?" Mira turned, slow and careful. "You can observe. But if anyone lays a finger on this child again without my say, I'll shut this station down with one broadcast." Elvin gave a slow nod. Understood. The council had no power left by the next rotation. The story had made Galnet front page. Child declared terminal, now breathing, after human intervention. Alien council under fire for abandoning hybrid life. Mira Halden, the mother who refused to let go. Petitions now had over 80 million digital signatures. A coalition of human and alien hybrid rights groups demanded a full medical policy review, and the council. They went silent, even Drawl, but the threat wasn't over yet. Deep within the back levels of the station, 2 shadows met in a service tunnel. One wore the uniform of a medical tech. The other was dressed in plain clothes, but with a surgical mask pulled low over his face. "Oh, she's making a mockery of the system," one hissed. "You saw the reports," the other said. "The child is stable, exactly the first," one replied, "which means we need to act. Before she rewrites the laws with her emotion and her blood." They nodded and disappeared back into the shadows. The room was quiet. Too quiet for a medical ward. Mira Halden sat beside the recovery bed, one hand gently holding the tiny fingers of the child everyone had once given up on. His skin was warm now. His breath no longer came in panicked, shallow bursts. Monitors glowed a soft green. Amari was alive, and he was waking up more each hour. But the silence outside, the glass wall, wasn't peaceful. It was full of tension. Alien doctors, administrators, and armed station guards stood watching, whispering, waiting for her to fail, waiting for the child to crash, waiting for a reason to remove her. They wanted her gone, but then boy spoke. It started with a whisper Mira had been humming softly. A lullaby from Earth 1 she used to sing to Karis, her first hybrid foster daughter. Amari stirred. His eyelids fluttered. She stopped humming and leaned closer. "Hey, I'm here," she whispered. "You're safe." His lips parted. First, it was just a faint sound. Then clearer. "Ma. Ma." Myra froze. The air left her lungs. Behind the glass wall, the room exploded in gasps. One nurse dropped her pad. A tech whispered, "Did he just—" Mira blinked back a tear. Then another. She touched his cheek and nodded. "Yes, baby. I'm Mama." And in that moment, the entire room changed. Even the guards looked moved. The 2 station guards who'd been assigned to watch, Mira didn't speak. One of them, the younger of the 2, quietly deactivated the stun rod hanging from his belt. He stared at Amari like he was seeing something impossible. A child, born of 2 worlds, human and alien, speaking his first word, not in pain, not in fear, but in recognition, in love. Outside the ward, cameras were already rolling. A hovering cam drone from Galnet News had snuck in hours ago. It captured every moment, the whisper, the word, the mother's reaction, and it didn't stay local. Within 20 minutes, the clip had been shared across 87 million systems. First word, hybrid child calls human rescuer, mama tears. Across the galaxy, as Miracle Boy speaks, Mira Halden, the mother of a movement the Council had tried to suppress the story. Now it was out of their hands. Alien lawmakers began to panic. Her Kovis drawl slammed his fist onto the table. "We are not losing control to a human emotionalist with a broken rescue ship and a medkit from Earth's dark age." But even his own aides wouldn't look him in the eye. Some counselors had already begun backing away from the original stance. The word mistake had started showing up in closed memos, and in the background, a whispering storm was rising. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe human compassion has power we don't understand. Mira didn't care about the council. She didn't even know what was being said across the galaxy. All she cared about was the boy now gripping her thumb. "You fought hard, little one," she whispered. "You stayed." Mari made another sound. It wasn't a word, but it was trying to be. She knew what that meant. The neurons in his brain, once dimming, were rebuilding. Human care protocols had done what alien tech never could, and all Myra had done was refuse to let go. A visitor entered the medbaiter. Alvin, the Varick scientist who had once dismissed Amari as a statistical failure, walked in slowly. He didn't speak for a while. Just watched. Then he bowed. "Lo, you have taught us something important," he said softly. Mira didn't stand. "I didn't come to teach. I came to keep him alive." "Still," he said, voice cracked with guilt, "you've opened our eyes." He stepped closer. "May we assist?" Mira looked up, really looked at him. There was no hate in her eyes. It's just exhaustion and maybe hope. "Start by listening," she said. Elsewhere on the station, shadows stirred, but not everyone was moved by Amari's first word. In the engineering ducts, in the power corridors, a small faction was meeting. They were Vorex extremists, genetic purists. They believed hybrids were unnatural abominations created by reckless crossbreeding, unworthy of life. And now, the entire galaxy was celebrating one. We have to act, one whispered, before more of them start surviving. Before this Myra Halden becomes more than just a symbol. Plans are in motion, said another. We'll finish what the doctor started. But Myra was already preparing for more. She wasn't going home. Not yet. Amari needed continued care. Yes, but Myra had already begun converting her old ships. Backup systems into a portable hybrid recovery unit. She had data now. Readings, logs, recovery patterns, proof her. Methods worked, and she would share them, even if it meant standing alone against a galaxy of critics. One word had sparked a revolution, Mama. It wasn't just a name. It was defiance. It was life. It was the start of something bigger than Amari, bigger than Myra. It was the first brick in tearing down a wall of cold alien logic, placing it with human empathy, with refusal, with hope. The numbers didn't lie. Inside the main diagnostic center of VRX Station, walls of alien data streams pulsed across holographic screens. Enzymatic functions, neurochemical spikes, synapse formations, rebuilding faster than any VRX model had ever predicted. And at the center of it all, a child who should have died, a human who wouldn't let go, and now alien scientists had no choice left. We must admit it, said Dr. Elvin, voice low. The child survived not because of technology, but because of her. He tapped the final. Report into the archive system. Its title glowed in green across the screen. It's unclassified hybrid recovery. Evidence of cognitive stabilization via human emotional contact. The scientific world had just changed. Meanwhile, Mira was feeding Amari broth from a cup. She didn't know anything about reports or headlines. She just knew Amari could now sit up on his own. He was weak, but alert, curious. His eyes followed the steam rising from the cup. His fingers could almost grip the spoon. Mira chuckled softly. Don't worry, we'll get there. Amari looked at her, smiled faintly, and whispered, Warm. Right, she said. Warm. Behind her, a VRX. Nurse made a note. Not on a medical pad, but in a personal journal. Human caregiving protocols. Day 3. Subject shows signs of emotional response linked to physical healing. Mira rolled her eyes. It's just a kid, she muttered. Love him first. Study him second. Across the galaxy, alien researchers scrambled to catch up. The published report had triggered a chain reaction. On Tyron 5, alien neurochemists began testing soft stim empathy wave emitters, inspired by human lullabies. On Mueller Prime, a clinic launched the first human-led hybrid pediatric unit. Even the notoriously cold Orlaxi University began running. Lectures titled Human Compassion as a Viable Medicinal Influence, Error or Evolution, what had once been dismissed as primitive emotionalism, was now being rebranded as biopsychological therapy. And Mira Halden had become the unwilling, mother of a scientific revolution. But she didn't want fame, she wanted results. Mira sat down. Across from Dr. Alvin in the medbay's tiny side office, her expression was sharp, focused. I want access to your hybrid mortality archive, she said. What for? Alvin asked, blinking. To see who else you gave up on, and to see if there's still time to help them. He hesitated. Miss Halden, those files are protected by, you already lost the right to hide behind rules the moment you called my kid a corpse, she snapped. Alvin nodded slowly. I'll authorize access. They began building something new within 2 days. Mira had converted a section of the medbay into a human integrated recovery ward. Her simple colors, warm lighting, real blankets, music, talking, touch. She didn't need alien machines. She needed connection. Amari wasn't the only patient now. 3 more hybrid children had been moved to the unit. All were classified low chance of survival by VRX standards. But under Mira's care, one had already started to blink. The others smiled in their sleep, and the cameras caught it all. VRX. Adamins tried to regain control council members, who had once dismissed her, now called for private meetings. We wish to offer you an honorary fellowship in cross-species recovery sciences. No thanks, Mira said. Not here for the title. Perhaps a co-branded initiative with the Varex Foundation? Maybe, she said. If I run it my way? They hesitated, but with the galaxy watching and public support over 90%. In human systems, they didn't have much choice. But others still wanted her gone in, the deep power tunnels. The extremist faction had grown quiet, too quiet. The failed sabotage attempt was still fresh on their minds. They had tried to tamper with Amari's life support days ago, but Mira had caught the signs early. This time, they were planning something bigger. She's no longer just a woman. She's a movement, and we end the movement. The first threat came without warning. Mira entered the ward that morning to find a message carved into the wall near Amari's room. 3 words, in sharp. Alien letters, one must fall. Guards were called, scans done. The cameras had been looped. Someone inside the station was helping them. Mira's jaw clenched. If they come for these kids, she said quietly, they'll learn what a real storm looks like. But Amari only had one concern later that day. As Mira adjusted the bio bed, Amari tugged on her sleeve. Mama? Yeah, sweetheart? Why don't they like me? Her heart broke just hearing it. She knelt beside him and looked him in the eyes. Because they're afraid, she said gently. But fear's loudest when it knows it's losing. He nodded like he understood Evan. If he didn't fully, will they come for you? Mira smiled. Let them try. The revolution was no longer quiet across the galaxy. Hybrid children were being re-evaluated. Abandoned care cases were reopened. Alien hospitals quietly requested help from human doctors who had trained in Myra's style and in the capital city of Alaris Prime. A major senator proposed a radical new bill, Mira's Law, a galaxy-wide mandate requiring emotional care as a core part of hybrid treatment. But the extremists weren't done yet. As the law gained momentum and Myra's ward grew, a dark ship began drifting toward Varex Station. No markings, no ID signal, no life signs. But inside, something waited, and it was heading straight for the one woman who had changed everything. The lights flickered. It was barely noticeable, just a pulse, then a hum, but Mira noticed. She always noticed inside the recovery ward. The air seemed heavier. Amari, resting peacefully under a soft gray blanket, twitched in his sleep. Myra looked up at the ceiling. Lights flickered again. She stood slowly. Run a full system diagnostic, she said to the Varex nurse nearby. It's probably just a power cycle, Miss Halden. Mira's jaw tightened. No, it's not. She didn't know how she knew, but something was wrong. And this time wasn't just a warning. The alarm never sounded 3 minutes later. Myra was reviewing sensor logs on her tablet when the backup oxygen scrubber in Amari's room began to fail. No alert, no flashing red icons, just a quiet drop in pressure, slow enough to slip past auto-dash sensors. If Mira hadn't been watching, if she hadn't noticed his breathing shift, Mira would have never woken up. She smashed the emergency override with her fist, yanked open the valve panel, and manually rerouted. The airflow, the backup kicked in. Amari coughed twice, blinked, and looked up at her. Mama, I'm here. This was no accident later. Engineers confirmed what she already knew. The malfunction wasn't natural. It had been coded remotely, set to trigger on a delay, only for Amari's room. A deliberate attack, one meant. To kill, not fail. Security was compromised at Vrex. Station authorities swarmed the ward, guards posted at every door. Protocols tightened. But Mira didn't feel safer. She sat at her desk reviewing access logs. 4,392 badge entries in the last 2 days. Hundreds of maintenance subroutines. So many blind spots. Too many? She whispered. And then she saw it. Badge ID used at 312. Cross-referenced against the internal roster. The ID belonged to someone who had died 2 years ago. She was being hunted that night. Mira didn't sleep. She sat beside Amari's bed, a handheld pulse pistol in her lap. Eyes on the door, she could feel them watching out there beyond the reinforced walls. The extremists, they didn't care about science or survival or proof. They only cared about keeping the bloodlines pure, and now She had become the symbol of everything they feared. "You've made me dangerous," she muttered. Under her breath, "Now I make you regret it." But she wasn't alone anymore. Alvin entered quietly, hands folded, carrying a data pad. "Mira, you were right about the ward, about everything?" "That's comforting," she said dryly, but a bit late. "We traced the code from the scrubber attack," he continued. "It came from inside the Council's private relay network. You saying someone up top is helping them?" "Yes," he said. "And I think you're their next target." "Good," Myra said, standing. "Let them try." The next day, a bomb threat was issued. Came via a scrambled channel. No voice, no name, just text. "Remove the hybrid. Shut down the ward, or everyone in Section C dies at sunrise." Station went into lockdown. Families evacuated. Power. Rerouted. Ward sealed. But Mira didn't move. Neither did Amari or the other children under her care. "If they want us gone," she said to the Varix guards, "they'll have to come through me." And when one guard hesitated, she added, "You're either standing with the future or letting the past burn it down." A betrayal from inside. Station scanners swept for the bomb. Myra checked one of the children's Sela, small hybrid girl with teal skin and glowing irises. The monitor beside her bed flickered, then blacked out. Myra pulled the access. Land found a tiny, ticking device behind the wiring. It wasn't a bomb, it was a tracking beacon. One someone had planted during routine scans. "They're marking our room locations," she muttered, "which means the explosion won't be random." Mira made a choice. She gathered the children and activated the emergency biopods, something the aliens had deemed unnecessary for low survival patients. But Mira had kept them functional, quietly, secretly. Each child was sealed in protective stasis, their vitals stable, portable, and shielded. "I will not lose a single one," she whispered, locking Amari's pod last. Then she called for the one thing she hated. Evac. Not for her, but for the kids. The bomb was relat 5 o'clock station time. A pressure charge detonated in a waste tunnel. Directly beneath the ward, it didn't breach the hull, but it shook the floor hard enough to knock Mira off her feet. She hit the floor. Blood on her lip, the evac pods were already in transit safe, but she wasn't. And then, someone stepped through the smoke. Black armor, no insignia, pulse blade in one hand, a shadow. "You don't belong here," the figure growled. Mira staggered to her feet, clutching her pistol. "Neither do you." She fought hard. The fight was brutal. The attacker was trained military precision, its non-human strength. But Myra had something else. Rage, purpose, a mother's fury. She dodged the first strike, blasted twice at the legs. One shot hit, staggering the figure. He lunged. She ducked, rolled, shoved her boot into his knee with a crack. The pulse blade skittered across the floor. She fired again, this time into the chest. The attacker dropped. Breathing hard, Mira stared down at the body and then yanked the helmet off and saw a face. She recognized one of the VRX scientists. A man who had spoken kindly to her. A man who had laughed at Amari's first word. "You... ... double quotes," she whispered. You held his hand. His eyes flickered. "We have to stop the dilution," he rasped. "You don't, Mr. Dand." "No," she said, standing over him. "You don't." Then she walked away. Amari and the others survived. Their pods reached a secure satellite just outside the blast zone. Later that day, news broke. Human foster mother survives bombing attempt on Vorik Station, children safe. Extremist plot uncovered, council infiltrated by anti-hybrid group. The headlines exploded, and Mira hauled in. She finally let herself rest, but only for one night, because war wasn't over yet. It had just gone public. The council chamber was silent, the kind of silence that only comes when a galaxy is watching. Billions of eyes, across systems, across species, across alliances. Screens hovered in every major port, in every school, every home. A live broadcast, streamed from the core of Vorix Prima special session of the Galactic Medical Ethics Council. And in the center of that vast, towering room stood one human woman, her shirt still stained from smoke, her eyes tired but unyielding. "State your name for the record," a deep voice asked. "Mira Halden," she said clearly. "Foster mother of Amari, survivor of your mistakes." The council had summoned her to be silenced. They claimed it was a disciplinary hearing about breaking medical protocols. But everyone watching knew the truth. This was a trial by Fira. Final attempt to bury a woman who had dared to challenge everything. She had healed a dying hybrid child. She had defied alien science, had exposed corruption, and she had survived a bombing meant to erase her now. She stood here not as a nurse, not even as a mother, but as a symbol of what came next. The first counselor spoke coldly. His voice echoed across the dome. "Ms. Halden, you interfered with classified procedures. You took unauthorized guardianship of a genetically unstable hybrid. You tampered with station systems. You resisted lawful evacuation orders. You're forgetting something." Mira said, "Oh, I also saved his life." The crowd outside the chamber roared. Even though they couldn't be heard inside, the counselor's face tightened. Mira spoke without notes. "Without fear, you said, Amari was genetic waste, that no machine could save him, that no formula existed to fix what he was." And maybe that was true. She stepped forward. "But you didn't fail because of your data. You failed because you couldn't see the child through the numbers. You never even tried to love him." Gasps rippled through the room. She gave them the data they couldn't ignore. Mira comploaded her logs to the central projector. The screen lit up with biometric charts, before and after scans, hormone levels, synaptic maps. Amari's brain had healed 300% faster under human emotional care. Immune markers had stabilized after 48 hours of touch-based nurturing. Emotional bonding had directly triggered dormant hybrid DNA recovery. "Your own systems confirm it," she said. "He lived because someone refused to let him die." One counselor shifted in his seat. Another turned off his mic. Then she showed them the faces. A new screen opened. The children, not just Amara but Sela Dren, Valo, the other hybrids, smiling, laughing, reaching out for hugs, speaking their first words, each one marked as low survivability by Varix. Each one now thriving under her care. "Tell me, Mira," said voice sharp. "Was I wrong?" No one answered. Then she turned it on them. This wasn't just medical failure. This was political. She stepped up to the central floor, looking each alien in the eye. "You built an empire where hybrids were treated like errors. You let fear and purity and protocol bury your compassion." She pointed at the council's sigil. "You abandoned your duty. But I didn't, so now I ask you, what do you stand for?" They tried to cut the feed. One of the counselors reached for the emergency override, but another stopped him.
"I let her
finish," the old Chernari counselor said quietly. "We've silenced enough." Mira gave her final words to the galaxy. "I'm just one person, one woman. I didn't come with ships or armies. I came with a blanket, a storybook, a hand to hold. That's all it took to change everything." She looked directly at the main camera lens. "If that scares you, maybe it should." The vote took 10 minutes. It would be the most watched broadcast in Galactic history. At the end, the tally glowed across the great chamber walls. Motion passed. 6-3, effective immediately. Hybrid children granted full medical rights. Emotional therapy required in all treatment protocols. Mira Halden appointed Honorary Director of Hybrid Recovery Sciences. With full authority, the galaxy erupted. But Mira didn't celebrate. She returned to the evac ward, where Amari was waiting. He was sitting up, playing with a toy cube. When he saw her, he smiled. "Mama." She dropped to her knees and hugged him tight. "You did it," she whispered. "You did it?" "Did what?" she asked. She kissed his forehead. "You made them." See. 1 week later, the Hybrid Initiative was born. Human-led hybrid recovery stations launched on over 40 planets. Human caregivers were embedded in alien hospitals. Scientific studies reclassified empathy as an essential treatment variable. Mira Halden's story became mandatory viewing in medical academies. But she didn't want Famira went back. To her ward, her children. Her peace. One night a reporter asked her, "Do you think you changed the galaxy?" She smiled softly. "No, I just loved a child the way a mother should, and that was enough."